Welcome to More Precious Than Rubies, where we explore and celebrate the stories of women in our modern world. I'm Ariana, and in this special global season, we're exploring how women around the world are living out their callings in extraordinary ways. Today's guest is Sasibai Kimis, the founder of Earth Heir, a Malaysian women-owned business that connects consumers with artisan-made goods, while also investing back into communities behind each piece. Earth Heir's work centers on fair partnerships, design-led craftsmanship, and real economic opportunity for groups often pushed into the margins, including rural women, indigenous communities, refugees, persons with disabilities, and youth at risk. Sasi, welcome to the show. It's so fantastic to have you here. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Ariana, for making time across the world to have this chat.
In this season, I think it's been my favorite thing so far to get to tell people good morning when it's very much so night for me, and just to see how we can still make friends and garnish community even with a really different time change. So thank you for taking time out of your morning to be with me. I know your husband's watching your child, so I'm super appreciative also of him taking the time to do that too. I'm overall just impressed with all of the work that you've done with Earth Heir and also just other organizations. So I'm super excited to kind of give our audience a look into what you do with Earth Heir. So to kind of start and give people a little bit more context, can you tell us more about what first opened your eyes to the people and stories that led you to build Earth Heir?
So my background is actually in finance. I'm ethnically Indian. I was born in Malaysia, but my grandfather came from India to Malaysia, and then my dad was born here. So I'm second generation here in Malaysia. And so we still have a lot of family in India, and my parents would take us to India when we were younger. And, when we used to go there, I kind of saw the extreme disparity of, at least the part of India where my family was from, the village that my parents were from. There were people living in mud homes. They weren't flushing toilets. There wasn't like piped water. Water was still from wells. And, so it was kind of like a bit of a shock for me, coming from Malaysia, where we had all the basic amenities, and then going to the village and seeing that. It's only when I experienced it, then I realized, oh, okay, the reality of other people around the world is not the same as my reality, which I know. That kind of stayed with me. And then as I grew up, I saw poverty in my own family. My relatives were struggling in India. And then when I went to study in the US, I pretty much thought that, oh, maybe I should try to make a lot of money, because clearly money is what people lack, and that's why they're poor. So I decided to go work in investment banking, and it was interesting because then I realized,
Yeah.
oh, hey, I'm actually making rich people richer. And, it's like the people that around the world that are poor are not really getting the help they need. So I quit my job and I went to do my master's in the UK. And after that, I ended up working with the UN in Ghana in West Africa. After working with the UNDP, I worked with an NGO there. So it's kind of like two different worlds, because when I was in New York, it was, we were making all these big companies, helping them make more money. But there wasn't very much interest in helping, people in need. While in Ghana, we're helping a lot of people in need, but there never seemed to be enough money. So it's kind of like these two worlds that are not joining up. And so that's when I started, thinking about social enterprise. And also when I was doing my master's in the UK, like my thesis was on microfinance, and it kind of made me start thinking about how can we use business and enterprise to do good in a way that is sustainable, so we're not always struggling for money. And then if we're making money, the money that we are making, that we reinvest it to do good. So I came back to Malaysia. I was working in Malaysia Sovereign Wealth Fund for about 2 years because I wanted to think about how I could contribute to where I came from. And one day I was going home from work and I sort of like fell asleep when I was driving because I was so exhausted from working like really long hours. Um, so that was kind of what made me like step back and think like, what am I really doing with my life? And is this the kind of life that I want? Like, what kind of legacy am I leaving behind if, say, I had died that night? Would I have been proud of the life that I lived? So I kind of came to a stop and I quit my job and I told my bosses, like, I'm taking a sabbatical. At that point, I went to Hawaii. I was learning natural farming. We were also building schools and teaching English in Cambodia. Actually, at YWAM, it's called Youth with a Mission. And so when we were in Cambodia is when I met with a lot of struggling weavers in the villages because they were getting paid like $1 for their work. And I mean, they were given the raw materials by the retailers or whoever, the middlemen, but for their labor, they were getting paid like $1. And then those scarves that they were then making were being sold for like 2 or 3 times the price, right?
Hmm. And that money, I'm sure, wasn't going back to them, right?
I mean, the retail world, I mean, that makes sense. Like from the price that you purchase, you would resell it at 2 or 3 times to make sure that you have enough of a margin to support the retail operations. But $1 for like, I don't know, like 5 days, 6 days of work to make one scarf is pretty low. But in Cambodia, that was considered a reasonable sum. So I just thought, but these families are struggling. So I actually just started buying products from them and reselling it in Malaysia to my family and friends. And essentially, that's how Earth Heir started. It
Okay.
was just like a hobby. It was like a side thing. I didn't really envision that it would become a business, um, but it ended up becoming a business because I met with a Christian impact investor, and he said, "Look, if you really want to make a difference in the lives of these women, this cannot be a hobby. You have to make this into a real business so that it's something sustainable that you do." So I ended up registering Earth Heir in 2013. Many times I felt like giving up. I mean, after 3 years of running it, in the first 3 years when I wasn't earning a salary, I was really struggling and I was so overwhelmed and I was burnt out. I was about to like shut Earth Heir down. But then I got the Eisenhower Fellowship and I spent like 7 weeks in the US meeting different people. And that was when I started, getting new ideas for what we're doing. And I started doing more like B2B work. And then we got a physical space, which I think all made a difference because before that, I was working from my parents' house. It was very hard to grow when you don't have a space for the products. Yeah. So when we finally managed to be able to afford to rent a space, I think that made a difference. So for the first 10 years of it there, like we started working with artisans outside of Malaysia, like artisans in Thailand, Cambodia. And then I spent the first 2 to 3 years actually learning myself because I mean, I came from finance. I don't know anything about working with artisans or designing products or
Yeah.
building a brand or like, I didn't like retail. I didn't know anything, right? So I had to spend time like learning all of that myself. In the last 10 years, Earth Heir is now Fair Trade certified. We are B Corp certified. And when we got to 10 years, which was 2023, I started thinking about like again, it's been 10 years I've been doing this, is this really the best use of my time and my talent? And so I started thinking about what we're doing at Earth Heir. And, we've built our brand, right? And we have this goodwill and everything. But at that point, I started thinking about I can't go on if I'm only growing Earth Heir. Like, I don't feel a drive and a passion to just keep going to build like one brand for a small group of people. I mean, like the artisans that we're working with only. And during COVID, I noticed, I mean, a lot of organizations like really struggling and some of them shut down. We couldn't get sales. And, the issue of market access is a problem with nearly every artisan business in the world. I mean, what we're doing at Earth Heir is not like, oh, this is so special, because there's so many brands around the world that are doing exactly what we're doing, like working with communities on the ground and helping them, right? But a lot of the times people don't know they exist, or how do you find out about them, right? So that's when in 2023 and officially 2024, we actually launched Earth Heir Collective. So now Earth Heir, our website and our shop, we actually have products from many other brands and social enterprises and NGOs. In our physical shop, we have more than 30 different social enterprise and nonprofit products. Yeah. Um, because a lot of, these social impact organizations don't have their own websites that people can shop from, or they don't have traffic, and stuff. We've sort of brought all of them under one roof, so people can shop and buy from all of these brands and all these organizations in one place. Last year, we also launched our 1% social pledge, where we're trying to encourage companies and government agencies to practice social procurement. So we're trying to say, like, please at least think about putting up to 1% of your procurement expenses to purchase from social impact organization. And it's a commitment that they are making that they will keep to and support social impact organizations. Yeah. So we're focusing a lot more on building the ecosystem and growing the ecosystem for social procurement in Malaysia. So I'm reaching out to like the government to try and see if they would create policy that would encourage government agencies and companies in Malaysia to buy more socially.
That's fantastic. I think all that context is going to be super helpful for everyone as we continue to ask you more questions. And you're just setting us up for success as we understand Earth Heir. And your brand stands out because not only does it incorporate other small businesses and other organizations that are local to you, but what a good extension of your business to have a working website that ships. It ships all over the world, I would assume.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's another great thing that you guys are doing that probably not a lot of other places can even handle, just because, like you said, the number of people that you have, if you're the only person on your team, that's a lot of work to put forth. So I'm just so impressed by you because that is a lot of work for a woman to handle and for a passion to continue after all those years.
I mean, I'm not alone, thankfully. I don't think I could do this if I was alone. No, so we do have a team, and we have a retail team that works on this full time. So, like managing our store and our website. I mean, yes, but it is not easy. I mean, so our model is that we take a commission of sales. So we take 30% of the retail price of the products. So that's also part of what we do. We do a lot of mentoring. So we help the organizations or artisans create proper pricing, because a lot of them don't know how to price properly or even include a margin and pay themselves a salary. So we actually help the organizations calculate their pricing properly and create a wholesale and retail price so that, they then also have proper pricing when they have inquiries from other people who are interested to buy their products. And so far at the moment, we've been doing this now for about 2 years, and it has like the level of sales has not been enough to sustain our operations, like as in just selling products B2C.
Okay.
So we also do B2B. And we also have sort of like an academy where we train. It's called Sustain Me. And we train other artisan groups, micro entrepreneurs, or other small businesses in product design, plastic waste management, pricing, and storytelling. And then we mentor them to help them with challenges that they're facing in marketing their products. And then at the end of our program, if they have, put in the effort to improve their products and listen to us and, and stuff like that, we actually put their products in our shop. So they actually get market access as well.
Technically, Earth Heir is involving ethical fashion. It's not fast fashion, right? I think that's a buzzword that a lot of us hear nowadays is fast fashion versus ethical fashion. And that was your goal, is to get these people out of poor working environments and paying them what they deserve in the work that they're doing. So when you say ethical fashion or conscious living, what does that actually require from sourcing to production to partnerships? So how does that kind of all fit together into what we would call ethical fashion and an ethical industry?
I mean, I don't think that any product is fully ethical because if you're
Okay.
creating a product, I mean, if you don't do anything, then you're probably the most
Yeah.
ethical because you're not creating any waste, you're not using up any resources. Um, but the way I think about ethical fashion is like, the raw materials, like what kind of raw materials are you using? And then um, what is the labor process involved in making the product, the labor, and also the how the process of making the product itself. And then thirdly, what happens to the product at the end of its useful life cycle. I think that we need to look at all of them. So you can't just look at materials and then ignore the labor and how people are being treated and how the product is actually made. You can't ignore that. And then you also can't just look at labor and materials and process and ignore what happens to the product at the end of its useful life, you know? So you kind of need to think about all of those things to make sure that you are treating people well, you're using as sustainable materials as you can, and the process of making the product is not damaging the environment or harming people. And then that the product is not sitting in a landfill and going to take 500 years to decompose. That you're trying to make sure that the product is reusable or recyclable or biodegradable or as much as possible even made from recycled products, etc. That's kind of how I look at what we do. And so for me, it was very important that whatever materials we use is sustainable or natural or biodegradable. And then, of course, paying people fairly for their work and making sure that, I mean, most of our artisans, or actually 100% of them, work from home. So they
Fantastic.
work from home and so that they can look after their families. We do have some disabled artisans, so they can't leave home. It's easiest for them to work from home. So out of all of our products, we had one product that was made from plastic strips. And that was our Nelly bag range. And so for a couple of years when we made that bag, I really struggled because I was like, of all of the products in our range, this is the only product that I don't know, how our customers are throwing the bag, or it's plastic. It's not biodegradable. So it's damaging the environment. I started looking for someone who could help us recycle the bags, and so we started a program encouraging our customers to return the bags because they last for about 5 years or so, and then they kind of start like shedding a little bit and kind of
Okay.
breaking. So we started a circular program where our customers could return the bag and we recycle it and they get like a discount. But I couldn't find anyone to help us recycle the bags. And that took us a few years. And funny story, long story short, that's how I met my husband because he runs a social enterprise called Sea Monkey Project, and they build plastic recycling machines.
Oh
So
my goodness.
I met him at a pop-up and I was like, "Hey, can you guys help us recycle this bag?" And and then COVID happened and I lost touch. But like after COVID, we got in touch again and I was like kind of bugging him. I'm like, "Can you please see if you can help us recycle this bag?" And that's kind of, what happened, and we started talking and yeah, and then got married. I think in thinking about ethical fashion, I mean, it's like if you look at food and how like the slow food movement has grown and how long it has taken people to realize why it's important to support farmers and why it's important to try and have naturally grown organic food and how it impacts our lives. I think the ethical fashion movement is also on that same trajectory, but it's still going to take a long time. I mean, because we still have so many products, from clothing to things that we buy every day, that is full of plastic, that is full of
Yeah.
synthetic materials. And we don't really think about it because we think we can just throw it away and it doesn't affect us. But, a lot more studies are now showing that wearing polyester is impacting our bodies, So all of our workout clothes, like all that spandex, all those tights and everything, our yoga clothes, whatever. It's like if it's made out of polyester, it could be causing infertility. We need to start thinking about what we're putting on our bodies as well. It's no longer about, oh, it's just clothing, I'm not eating it, doesn't make a difference. It is impacting us. All those synthetic chemicals or whatever are getting into our skin and damaging our endocrine systems, etc. So sometimes I feel like, whoa, I'm telling people to go back to the industrial ages, you know, or, when people used to make things by hand and we didn't consume like 500 pieces of clothing a year per person, like, because you don't actually need that much. So it's kind of going back to like wearing linen and cotton and natural things. I mean, I used to do that when I was living in New York. I used to go to the H&M that was in front of St. Patrick's Cathedral. Literally, I used to go to church and then walk across the street and go shopping. And and I would come back with bags of clothes and I'd be like, oh, it was only like $15-$20. It doesn't matter if I like don't like it or, it tears and I just throw it away. I did that myself. And I don't know if it's just youth or just lack of knowledge, but I didn't know all of this then and how damaging it was and how the people that made the clothing or products that I was buying were not treated well, and that if I buy products made out of polyester or nylon, I'm damaging my health. Yeah, so it was kind of like, learning all of these things. So I think ethical fashion is, growing, but it's not of prime importance yet because you still have a lot of brands that are doing very well selling cheap polyester stuff. Even big brands, like not many of their clothes are made out of, it's hard to find really beautiful, well made cotton and linen. So brands themselves need to look beyond their shareholders. And I think we live in a world where, I mean, the fact that our GDP, right, of a country is one of the biggest components is consumption.
Yeah.
So when consumption goes down, the GDP goes down. So it's almost like we're built on a structure in the world where it's like if you don't consume, then everyone thinks that life is going to be bad. Companies are incentivized by shareholders who want returns, and the returns are usually monetary. There are a lot of things that I think need to change for us as a world to be more sustainable and in a more like a better path.
Yeah, that's super helpful. I think that we've in past episodes, I've touched on a friend who shared the importance of ethical fashion here in the States. She's very passionate about that, and she works with a lot of Western brands that are ethical. And we talked about synthetic fibers and microplastics in another episode and how that affects women's fertility and infertility. So it's super interesting that you're bringing kind of those thoughts back up here. I love how Earth Heir is working with all sorts of people from all over the world. And the vision of Earth Heir is to build nations and generations as heirs of the earth. I think that was what your vision statement was on your website, right?
Yeah. So actually, unfortunately, had to, stop working with communities outside of Malaysia. Why?
Okay.
Because I realized that working with a large group of people from around the world meant that we were having shallower impact. So it's like we were spreading ourselves too thin. So what I decided was, we should focus on Malaysia, but make our impact deeper, rather than trying to be like working with like 10 different countries and having like less impact. Why not focus on Malaysia? And also, I realized that when people come to shop in Malaysia, they don't want to buy something from Cambodia or Thailand or
That's true.
Vietnam,
Yeah.
or they want to buy something that is Malaysian and made in Malaysia. Because to be honest, now when you travel in Southeast Asia or Asia, a lot of the places have the same thing. Like every single like market you go to and you're like, wait, where is this made? Because I see this everywhere in Bali, in Chiang Mai, and and so it like I realized there's actually a need for authentic, locally made products. But yeah, so we work just with Malaysian artisans at the moment.
That's a good clarification there. So maybe you can kind of talk about what that vision statement means to you personally and how it shapes your business decisions. Because I know even if you do work with now just Malaysian artisans, your work is still impacting people around the globe, and then they're telling other people about Earth Heir. So what does that vision statement mean to you personally? And again, how does it impact the way you do your business?
I'm a Christian, but we work with communities that come from all sorts of religions and
Yeah.
races. So for me, the reason why I started Earth Air is because I feel a deep responsibility. God gave us this earth. um, we are inheritors of this earth. Like God said to Adam, like, "Hey, I'm giving this to you, and take good care of it." So I feel like we as humans have a responsibility to take care of what we've been given. And that involves, people, animals, the environment. So we need to be good stewards of what we've been given. I mean, that's also why I called it Earth Air.
Heirs of the earth.
Yeah, that, we are inheritors of this earth and to live as heirs of the earth.
You describe Earth Heir as preserving heritage craftsmanship while blending traditional skills with contemporary design and training. Kind of how we talked about earlier, you're training up these artisans. So, what does that collaboration look like day to day with artisan partners? So, are they coming to class daily? Do they take classes at the beginning and then you kind of send them on their way? What does that look like?
Under our Sustain Me program, yes, we do have a formal like training program where we train communities, as I mentioned earlier. Um, and with our artisans that we've worked with for our products, we normally train them on design. It's not like they've attended a class, but we
Okay.
worked with them over the years to teach them about product design. So, I mean, the class that we do, we have actually done with our artisans like informally over the years. We normally go to the communities and we train them on like pricing, on design, product development, and also like production as well, because a lot of artisans, they make a few things, and then when there's like a order where there needs to be consistency, like they don't know how to do that. So we actually had to teach them like, hey, you need to make sure like we have templates for so that each bag that you weave is the same size, or whatever you're weaving or making is the same size, things like that. So just kind of teaching them like these sorts of like basic things, and also like helping them to manage their pricing, and making sure that they're paying themselves a salary, because a lot of them like actually don't include a salary for themselves,
Wow.
and then they just sell like, oh, this product, and you're like, oh, why did you price it like this? Oh, it's what everybody else sells it for. You know what I mean? So they don't actually have a basis
Yeah.
for how they price their products. Um, so we actually teach them like, okay, what's your material cost? Or if you make your materials yourself, how long does it take you to make it? How long does it take you to weave? And that they put a margin into their wholesale price, and then they put a margin into their retail price. So we actually tell them like, okay, before you sell to us at Earth Heir, you need to put like a 30% margin, for example, and then you need to make sure that you're including like a salary cost for yourself, like per product, into the price of the product. Yeah. So we've had a lot of artisans like that where we have actually increased what we pay them, because we felt like based on the calculations, or we're like, what you're charging is too low. So we're like, this is not reasonable. We think that if for something that takes 2 weeks to make, you need to earn more. So in a way, it's like you're not a traditional business, because traditional businesses, you're looking at how can you buy a product as cheaply as possible so you can maximize
Right.
profit. Here, we're like actually telling them to raise their prices so that,
Yeah.
you know, and we are paying more. But that's what I believe we're here to do, and I think that is responsible business, and that's how all businesses should be, that people who are making their products or services for them, we should be paying them fairly, and if we know that they are undercharging us, or we don't feel like, we think that's too cheap, like we should actually investigate and help them to come up with the right price with our buyers. We're actually telling them like, buy what you need, and buy
Right.
something that you think you'll use a long time. Like, don't just buy it like, because you're in an impulse and then you don't plan to use it for a long time, then don't buy it. So all of these things is kind of like, it sounds like, oh, you're kind of a stupid business person. Because you're, like, because you're not actually encouraging people to consume. Um, and it kind of sounds like a bit backward, but essentially that's what I think all businesses need to do. It's not about profit maximization. It's not about trying to see how you can keep increasing revenue. Of course, if more people buy from us and people buy less from fast fashion, I'm very happy, because that means fast fashion brands make less, and they're destroying the environment less. But essentially, like, it's trying to help people think about buy less and buy well.
I think if anybody is to take anything away from this episode, it would be that. So that's a great catchphrase for the episode, Sasi. Earth Heir has partnered with United Nations Refugee Agency, Made 51, as you mentioned a little earlier. That's an initiative to support displaced refugee artisans in Malaysia. So, how do you build trust, protect dignity, and ensure fair opportunities while also navigating real world constraints that refugees do face?
So we actually started working with refugees in like 2016. I mean, I just started working with like a refugee that like my pastor and church introduced me to. And he was like, hey, she's a Sri Lankan refugee. She doesn't have any work. Is there anything you can do? So, I found out that she could sew. So I was giving her like some products that she could start stitching for us. And that's kind of how it is essentially started. 2017 was when UNHCR, Heidi Kreis, who is the Made 51 lead, from Geneva. So Heidi was in Malaysia and she came to visit us and she said, "Hey, we've heard about the work that you're doing with refugees. Would you be interested in joining Made 51 to create products for Made 51?" That's when we started sort of like working with more refugees. Like, because at that point we had only been working with like, maybe 3 or 4 refugees. But when we started working with Made 51, we started working with a much larger group of refugees, and we also worked with refugees from a lot of different communities. So Malaysia has, I think, more than 200,000 refugees, and they come from many different countries: Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, Pakistan, different parts of Africa, like South Sudan, Sudan. So it was kind of difficult to think about how can we create a product that unifies or like all of them can work on. So it took us like about almost 1 to 2 years to come up with some products. And that's when we landed on our made jewelry. And so we now have a pretty successful refugee jewelry line that we've been making since 2017. And we work closely with the UN on that. I think in Asia, I mean, in Southeast Asia, we are the only ones in Malaysia working with the UNHCR. And in Thailand, there's Weave, which is another organization that works with
Yes.
me.
Mitos, right?
Yeah, Mitos, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the rest of the organizations are all based in South Asia, like in India, Pakistan, Southeast Asia, where there are only two from this part of the world. It has not been easy. Like, for example, like during COVID, there was a lot of xenophobia. Um, Maybe a little bit like what's happening in the US right now, where people were like just so like against migrants and immigrants, and like Malaysians were like, oh, we should kick all these migrants out because they're bringing COVID to us and blah blah blah, and we should remove all of them and kick them out of our country. And that's when like we started working with refugees to make like life-saving um personal protective equipment like PPE during COVID. And the refugee made PPE was being given to like clinicians and hospitals and clinics, all the first aiders at the front lines. And I made sure that we got media coverage
Yeah.
and for that. And I remember reading the comments, and it was like, finally, I read some positive comments about like refugees. I wanted Malaysians to understand that, they're not here because like, they want to come and fleece off of us. They just happened to come from situations that were bad and they needed a better place to live. And given the opportunity, they want to contribute and help and build dignified lives. And that, like, refugees in Malaysia are not here to like, oh, we just want free money, or like, we just want to use up Malaysia's resources and take jobs away from Malaysians or use up our welfare money or whatever. Like, Malaysia doesn't even recognize them because Malaysia is not signed on to the 1951 Refugee Convention. So refugees have no legal rights in Malaysia, right? So, but they're here and they need to live. So they do need to earn money and work. Um, so, that's kind of what we've been trying to do as well, is trying to help people understand that just because they're refugees, they're human. They're human like us. And they're willing to work and they want to contribute and they want to do good. Of course, there are people that are not, there are people who come in and maybe try to take advantage of things or whatever, right? But I think like majority of the refugees that are here in Malaysia are people that just want to work hard and they just want to give their families a better life.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Sasi. That's very much so still happening here, unfortunately. And I think that that's important to hear, though, for people here in the US too, is like so great that you're providing opportunities for literally the people that are just trying to make a living and escape a place that is dangerous or just a place that doesn't sustain their needs anymore. And so that's fantastic that you're providing those opportunities for them. Sasi, one more question. If people want to get involved with Earth Heir and purchase products online, or just if a company is watching and they want to be a part of the 1% initiative, how can they do that? What's the best way to shop the Earth Heir or get involved with it?
People can shop online, and we ship globally. So that's a way. And then, of course, in terms of like partnerships, I mean, if there are any companies or retailers or distributors that would like to stock social impact products from Malaysia, we'd be happy to explore that with them. And also, like, we've actually also had like quite a number of volunteers or interns that come. Once we had a volunteer from the US. She was like a visual merchandiser. She used to work with some big retail brands in the US. And she came and like she did such an amazing job, like
Wow.
just helping us like display our products in a really nice way in our shop, which was really nice. I mean, so I was amazed and I thought, wow, what a difference it makes when you have
Yeah.
someone with the right skills uh,
Yes.
come and like present the products, and then she did such a wonderful job. We have student interns and we have like volunteers, like people who are just like traveling and they're like, hey, I'll come and work with you for like a week or two and
Wow.
then keep on traveling somewhere else and stuff. Yeah. So um yeah. So there's loads of ways to contribute. And of course, even locally in the US, I'm sure there are so many organizations that are doing good, right? So I always encourage people to like, you don't have to come across the world to feel like, like you're doing something good. You can actually do something good right where you are in your own backyard and wherever people are. I'm sure there are communities locally that are actually needing a lot of help.
So if not Earth Heir, what else can you do for your community, for your environment? There's lots of other opportunities.
Yeah.
Well, Sasi, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Your wisdom and your knowledge and your experience has truly been inspiring to me. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks so much, Ariana.
Sasi, your story is a reminder that ethical fashion isn't only about what we avoid, it's about what we intentionally build. A heritage, like you kind of use the illusion of a kingdom, and how are you supposed to take care of your kingdom? So we're building up our heritage by the things that we consume and we buy. So that future is one where we want craftsmanship to be valued instead of erased. And so again, that story has just been so obvious in yours, and the passion that you have for Earth Heir is very obvious and very inspiring to me. So thank you all for joining us on this conversation with Sasibai. And if this episode has sparked something in you, I hope that you'll take one step towards conscious consumption, whether that's learning the story behind a product that you're consuming, choosing one item with care, or supporting brands that invest back into the people. Every purchase is a choice, but even more than that, it can be a relationship, one that honors the hands and histories behind what we wear and use. If you're interested in purchasing from Earth Heir, I'll list the website in the description below. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and tune in next time as we continue to explore the lives of remarkable women. Until then, you're worth far more than rubies. Set about your work vigorously with arms strong for your tasks, open your arms to the poor, and extend your hands to the needy. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised.